Backrooms is a 2026 American horror film directed by Kane Parsons in his directorial debut and stars Chiwetel Ejiofor, Renate Reinsve, and Mark Duplass. The plot follows a struggling furniture store owner who finds a gateway to a dimension of endless rooms in the basement of his store. So some of you may have noticed that for the last few months I've been kind of going, down the Backrooms rabbit hole, I guess you could call it. I'm really new to this whole liminal space thing and the analog horror stuff and all this. I've heard vaguely of it in the past, but I never really chose to investigate it. But yeah, I mean, I'm super curious about it, and I've been slowly going through Kane Parsons' original Backrooms playlist, or videos, whatever you want to call it, that he made as a teen during the pandemic by himself on his computer, which is really cool. And I've been kind of obsessed with this concept. That being the idea that, there could be seams in reality that you can pass through, finding yourself in another dimension, stuck in a purgatory that you can't escape or make any sense of. But I've always been a sucker for stories that can't be explained or understood. As I've said here many, many times over the years, I'm a big H.P. Lovecraft fan who wrote a lot about the unexplainable. That was just really kind of his thing. So I see Backrooms as very Lovecraftian, and I'll get back to that maybe later in this review, because we'll just start talking about the movie. So the beginning of Backrooms starts off, in my opinion, perfectly. I have seen some people complain about it, like maybe this should be more earned and not started this way. I totally disagree. I say it's perfect not only as a fan of the Kane Parsons web series, but also because I don't know, it seemed like a good nod to Kane's very first Backrooms video, which I thought was really clever. I mean, it's not exactly the same. We see an employee of the Async company, which is a company who's been studying the Backrooms, and as far as we know, the only people who actually know about it or have been able to escape it, and are still alive, that is. And this guy is lost, man, and he's terrified, and he seems to be running from something. This scene was also shot in the found footage style, which we do go back to periodically when certain characters have cameras. So that's really cool. So yeah, a lot of people, feel that you shouldn't just start off the movie in the Backrooms. Again, you should probably maybe wait a half hour, and I do get that, because technically if you were to cut this scene out, it is about a half hour-ish before we go back to the Backrooms. So I don't know. I think this. I disagree with that. I think this opening I think was cool because it's just it starts off and it's totally freaky and it's totally intense, and then you get a break from that, going back to just the regular world. I think it's cool. Then we meet our main characters, starting with Clark, furniture store owner struggling with his marriage and a drinking problem. Mary is his psychiatrist, an equally complex character, since she struggles with childhood trauma from her mentally ill mom, and recently the demolition of her childhood home. I liked the idea of having, two very imperfect leads, and I see that as kind of a metaphor for, maybe how all of us are secretly struggling and coping with something behind the scenes, and even those who are there to help us, they have problems too. That said, I think a lot of us, and I've said this before, and I was probably late to say this, but a lot of us I know are kind of just getting tired of this trauma dump horror. And I wouldn't say that this is, the Backrooms is not all about that, but with Mary's story, and even Clark's, yeah, their human stories are definitely trauma-based, but the Backrooms itself, again, is alien. It is entirely, the Backrooms have no emotion. So I like that. So yeah, man, I try not to overthink every detail here because there's a lot of them. And from what I've seen so far is, people jumping to a lot of conclusions and trying to read into things maybe just a little bit too hard, but I do get it. So one night, Clark sees a flickering light in the lower level of his store, even when the power is completely turned off. And when he goes to check it out, he finds a seam, as you guys have seen if you've seen the trailer, like a seam in part of the wall that he, reluctantly passes through, not understanding what's going on, of course. Is this part of the store? Something forgotten? He's only able to explore for a short time before he hears something hostile sounding, so he runs back inside the store. After hearing that, man, I don't know if I'd want to go back in, but he didn't see anything, so we didn't really know what it was. And I wanted to point out that the the origin of the Backrooms, like the very thing that inspired it years ago on 4chan, was pictures of an old former furniture store in Wisconsin. So using a furniture store for the connective tissue of this story was just a perfect homage. Like, I thought that was really cool. Not everyone might know about that. I think a lot of people do, though. So Clark tells Mary about his discovery, and he has a background in architecture, so he's been mapping out all the rooms as he discovers them. And when he tells Mary about his discovery, he uses this analogy that I had to think about for a while, but it's smart. He describes the Backrooms as someone describing a dog to someone who has never seen one, and then asking them to draw a picture of it. It just looks not right. So he becomes obsessed with the Backrooms, which is kind of understandable. I would too. I'm already obsessed with them, and they don't even exist. So he convinces his 2 employees to come help him record some video, which is another scene that shows that Clark he's an asshole. He's not a good dude, and it goes badly, as you can imagine. Clark calls Mary and tells her that he's never coming back. So, she is a therapist. She's an empathetic person, and she goes looking for him. And I'm going to stop talking about the story at this point, because I don't really think I can say much else without going into spoiler territory. And this is just a movie you need to see for yourself anyways. I could just stop talking entirely, but I have a little more to say. Because also at this point is where things begin to get even more bizarre. And there's even a scene that is like a specific scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre if it was directed by David Lynch instead of Tobe Hooper. And the third act is the most bonkers in the best of ways, in my opinion, as Mary tries to find her way out of the Backrooms and she just finds crazy structures and things that don't really get explored. Not that I'm complaining, because you couldn't explore it all. So back to me talking about how I would consider the Backrooms Lovecraftian horror. All of it, the movie and the original web series, and here's why. First, I'm basing this off everything I know about the Backrooms, and it's that the Backrooms essentially, to me at least, are kind of like a living entity, dead but dreaming and remembering. And that right there is enough for me to get serious Lovecraftian vibes, but there's more. According to Backrooms lore, so far at least, the Backrooms cannot be explained or understood, though people are clearly trying. And for the most part, I hope it stays that way. But we also see potentially the effects of the Backrooms causing insanity in some cases, maybe due to the alien nature of like encountering something you just can't understand, and that's just Lovecraftian as fuck, man. So I'm giving the Backrooms 3 out of 4 stars. I love it. I'm obsessed, and I want more. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex, unless we get lost in the Backrooms before then. Subscribe right now, please.